call the special work session meeting for January 22nd, 2019 to order. And welcome to everyone here. It's good to see most all of you yesterday at the parade, which was kind of blustery to begin with, but we got through with very little wind chafing. So thanks to all who participated. I think it was a fabulous, fabulous day all around. Mr. Superintendent, the meeting is yours.
Thank you. Good morning. You know, we have a couple, Jerry did a couple posts out there and some Twitter stuff, and so we got a nice shot of everybody in the back of the truck. Everybody's recovered, but that was a great day to watch our students. We had great coverage last night on Channel 5, 20, and what it's called, Fox 29. Really good. John Shaman, who does a really good job. Have some shots of the bands and interviewed some students. So we're doing very, very well. Okay, so we're going to have two presentations today. One will be on mental health services and supports for the students. I know that this is near and dear to everybody on the board. Increased emphasis from the state as well, and I wanted Bill to come up and his team to give you all an update as to what we are doing, so that when we are out there talking to our public, that you have a good idea of some of the things that are happening, and that'll be followed up by a minor possible modification for student assignment that John and Michelle will discuss with the board. Then we'll go into an executive session. Bill.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board, Mr. Gent. Thank you for this opportunity to speak to you this morning about mental health services and supports and where we are in the district based on the implementation of Senate Bill 7026. I wanted to start out with just a snapshot about adolescent mental health. That the start of these conditions most often occurs in adolescence, and half of the individuals living with mental illness will experience this onset by the age of 14. That jumps to 75% by the age of 24, and approximately 1 in 4 youth in the United States have a diagnosable health disorder, but less than half of them receive the needed services. And this is so paramount to the work that we're trying to do within the school system to really be able to address mental health. If we look at just at the number of youth in Florida that are under 18, it's roughly about 4.1 million students. That would translate to 1 million of Florida's youth that are experiencing some type of behavioral health disorder. And this is negatively impacting their ability to function in school, in home, and in the community. Thus, the need for us to really have well-working interventions put in place that will address these mental health issues. We know that it is important, if we're going to address the whole child, that we're looking at good social and emotional health, good behavioral health, and good physical health that will all impact their mental health and well-being. It has been stated that youth with behavioral concerns are at significant increased risk for negative outcomes such as school dropout, juvenile justice involvement, substance abuse, and other related negative consequences. And we see this throughout the school system in many of the youth that we're dealing with that have not had early intervening as part of the assistance that comes for them. We know that research tells us that if you intervene early to prevent the disorders before they develop, this will reduce the likelihood of these escalating into more serious types of behaviors that will involve others. The statistics about mental health are alarming, and this is just a snapshot of what's in our comprehensive mental health plan, just additional statistics. But as you can see, and as you've seen in the past when we've talked about mental health before, there is an alarming statistic now about mental health and the kids that need intervention. We were required under Senate Bill 7026 to submit a comprehensive mental health plan by August the 1st of 2018. We did meet that requirement. We submitted our plan in July. It was approved by the school board, and we're continuing the work around that plan in order to be able to implement it appropriately. Senate Bill 7026, just a review of that, it was created to fund and assist school districts in establishing or expanding mental health services for students. It could not supplant any funds that were already being spent on mental health, and we were encouraged to work with all of our parties to maximize any third-party way of payment for mental health services such as Medicaid or third-party insurance for students. And we are doing that because we do the school match program for Medicaid as well. And they had to be focused on mental health treatment and include everything that was evidence-based. When we started working on our comprehensive plan for the district, we really took a very close look at all of the things that we had in place already. And we worked to enhance those, but also to add additional areas that needed more attention, that could be more in the preventive phase. And after I speak, I'm going to have Tracy come up just very quickly to give you an update about the social and emotional learning that we're doing with all of our schools, because this is in the preventive phase in Tier 1 of what we're doing. We are working with our well-established mental health collaborative to also improve the services that children are provided from outside agencies. And we have to work with those providers that are providing the mental health services, and that would be the 7 members that are part of our mental health collaborative. And we did actually do some employment of individuals within the district, and I'll talk about that in just a moment. But in order to enhance that, we wanted to really look at how we could expand the use of social workers within our school system. We had 9 positions in existence already, and we added 5 more, so that gave us 14 social worker positions. And those have all been filled, and they're working and serving schools, including 2 of the charter schools that chose to come in under our plan. We did allocate dollars for 5 new school psychologists. We had 3 of those positions filled. We're down to 2 now because 1 moved at Christmas to North Carolina, so we're missing 1 of those. But we do have 11 agencies, excuse me, that are recruiting nationally as part of an RFP that we did release for this. We added a school-based mental health counselor to Delcassens, and we are contracting with a clinical psychologist and also working with our agencies that make up the collaborative to pay for direct services for children that need mental health intervention that is not covered under Medicaid or part of their insurance. There's a lot in Senate Bill 7026 that we're trying to adhere to and make sure that we are part of. There was a governor's executive order that required 3 specific meetings with DCF as the lead agency, the managing entities, Southeast Behavioral Health, and the other agencies that are required to provide mental health services. The purpose of that was to establish an alignment to make it easier to communicate with all of these different agencies that may be involved with children, and also to make recommendations that go back to the governor on how we could support mental health for children. There was a requirement for youth mental health first aid for all employees that work in the district. This year alone, we've already trained 236. We did have a grant under Project Aware that we had received from SAMHSA in 2014-15. So we've been providing mental health, youth mental health first aid all along. So we have about 614 people in the district that are now trained as first aiders. And we've been working with the National Council for Behavioral Health, and we have 12 certified youth mental health trainers as well. Yes, Mr.
Bill,
Chairman.
the first aid required, the mental health first aid, how many hours, total hours is it?
National Council for Behavioral Health set this as an 8-hour training, but because Florida had written this in as part of the statute, they have given us permission to do that in a 6-hour model. There is discussion with the Department of Education and the National Council of working on an online version of this for other employees that are non-instructional that would be able to take an online 2 to 3 hour version of this, but they've not made any headway at this point in time in getting that accomplished. We have 7 agencies that are now supporting our mental health collaborative. The total number of referrals to date as of Friday, we have submitted 440 referrals to these agencies based on referrals that come to us from schools, the guidance counselors in schools for services. The total for the entire year of 17-18 was 734. We have also been working with our mental health collaborative to add mental health counselors on campuses throughout the school system, and we have met with 10 separate principals to add a counselor to their campus. We do have the one already up and running at C.A. Moore and the one at Forest Grove Middle as well. And we are working with the collaborative now in establishing the payment process for services for these students that do not have insurance. We've also been working with our community partners. We have expanded our work to the Executive Roundtable. They now have a new committee that addresses mental health collaboration, and that is among all of the parties and entities within the district, down to the Department of Health and the Early Learning Coalition as well. I'm working along with Will Armstead from the Boys and Girls Club to chair another subgroup of the Executive Roundtable that will address youth violence and delinquency, and we're meeting with agencies to establish linkages and support for those children and families as well. Part of our work under Title IV is also to increase alternative to suspension programs so that kids are not being suspended from school, and we're working with 6 separate principals on adding an alternative to suspension program for their school. And the Florida Association of District School Superintendents has met with all districts in a convening conference twice so far this year to address the mental health needs and to see how the DOE can better support us. But we are working continuously, nonstop, to build that multi-tiered system of supports in schools. And I just gave you some examples of what we're doing at Tier 1. The School Climate and Culture, PBIS. We had 22 model schools last year. When the announcement comes this year, we will have 25 model schools, and that announcement is coming soon. Social and emotional learning, we've created an entire new division for that. We're working on restorative practices as part of our Tier 1. We have good support from the University of South Florida on many of the initiatives that we do as well. The signs of suicide, this is an ongoing effort. We're in our 3rd year of that, addressing the needs of all 9th grade students and working to do resource mapping so that all schools will know the available resources that exist within this community. And we are working to strengthen our interagency agreements, and we just went into an agreement with Sandy Hook Promise to do more to strengthen what we're doing for signs of suicide and crime prevention clubs and training for our threat assessment teams. And this is part of Senate Bill 7026 as well. Most of this falls under Brian, but we have to work collaboratively together because we have to make sure that kids that have demonstrated a threat are referred for mental health counseling services if that is appropriate. And the training that we're establishing for principals with Sandy Hook Promise will be on March 4th and 5th. The threat assessment teams have to be able to collaborate with agencies whenever there is a perceived threat and to be able to work with the mobile crisis unit and law enforcement in a more quickly identified manner than what they've done in the past. And the Southeast Behavioral Health Managing Entity is working with New Horizons and others on the mobile crisis unit response so that that would be much quicker. And then all of this requires data to be reported to the Department of Education every year. St. Lucie Public Schools is also the fiscal agent, falls under my department for SEDNET, the Network for Severely Emotionally Disabled Children. We serve 4 districts, Indian River, Martin, Okeechobee, and St. Lucie. SEDNET is now responsible for overseeing all of the youth mental health first aid, and we did receive an additional grant under this from the DOE to provide the training and assist in the Quad County area. And they are working also to increase the services and improve the outcomes for children with emotional or behavioral disabilities. And the Safe School Specialist, Brian Ruther, also is required to work with and in collaboration with the SEDNET specialist to make sure that all staff members have been trained on youth mental health first aid. We will be hosting a training to add additional trainers through the Quad County area in June, and that will be provided by the National Council on Behavioral Health. And this is what we're trying to get to. This is a graphic provided by the Department of Education. If we can get This Tier 1 system really identified where we're providing preventive measures for children and addressing those across the board for all kids. We should have only a few children that end up in that Tier 2 for at-risk. That's where we're starting to see some of our social work really paying off, because we have them now working with small groups. And then in Tier 3, which is a very individualized, should only be about 5% of children. And that's where you would have more intensive individual services and additional wraparound services. And this is just another graphic to represent that. And all of this works into creating a good foundation of support with our outside partners. Any questions? Thank you very much for the opportunity. I'd like to bring in Tracy now, if we could, just to talk about social emotional.
Mr. Tomlinson?
Bill,
Were you
I'm
thinking?
sorry, Mr. Tomlinson,
Catherine did have a question.
do we have anybody from our district that sits on the managing entities board?
Not yet.
Thank
Not
you.
from the school board.
Okay, thank you.
We're working on that.
Yes, and who do we need to work, Ann
Well,
directly?
we're
or-
working with Ann directly. She's part of the executive roundtable
Yeah.
that we're focusing on with mental health, so.
Okay, I've already had a conversation with our new exec for New Horizons, as well as the exec from Children's Services Council, to see if they can't focus a little bit more on having a rep from on the board. Okay.
Thank you
Madam
for
Chair,
your support.
excuse me, something that I hate to say, but I have to say, that I think we as the employers of our staff in St. Lucie County School Board have to be so sensitive to our staff and make sure that our people that are working for us are solid in their belief and in their emotional health, because they're expected to deal with the children every day. And there was just an incident in Palm Beach with a coach that actually my grandson attends, the school, that was a murder-suicide. Nobody saw it coming. It was a Christian school. It was a shock to the whole community. And in thinking about that and how that affected those children, I want us to be very conscious that we are giving every bit of aid to our staff so that they can work, with the trauma of the children. Because if you're weak and you're not stable yourself, how can you, and I know that's a little off, and yet it is part of this puzzle that we have to find the solution for the traumatized situations.
And we have to continue to provide quality training for all of the people that work in the school system to understand what happens when children are exposed to trauma, how that we interact with those children in a more positive manner, because that's why we're focusing so much on reducing this out-of-school suspension, trying to treat the behavior before it escalates into something more serious. So it's a very good point. Thank you, Ms. Hilson.
Good morning, and thank you, Mr. Tomlinson, for this opportunity. Madam Chair, board members, Mr. Gent. It is really with great enthusiasm that I am here to provide you a very brief update about the very newly formed Social Emotional Learning Department, or SEL for short. First, I'd like to orient you to our logo, which is up on the screen or in your packet. I want you to notice that it clearly states that St. Lucie Public Schools is focused on the development of the 5 core SEL competencies for our students, with the support from their teachers, families, and our communities. You'll also notice that there's 2 symbols there. One is the heart right at the center, and that is symbolizing it all starts with loving ourselves. And there's a huge focus on that in teaching kids and as well as adults about ourselves and loving. And then the peace sign, as you see there, is another symbol which just focuses on harmony and how we should have harmony within ourselves and when we're working and alongside of one another in the work that we do with our kids and the kids inside in our classrooms. I would like to introduce you to our very tiny but our mighty department. Christina Capola and Cassie Chang are here with us today as well. And we want to just take this opportunity to express our gratitude for allowing us to do this work and supporting us through using the Title IV grant funds as we embrace the social emotional needs of our students. We are doing this work by focusing on the needs of the whole child, as Mr. Tomlinson has said, using a universal approach by providing the curriculum and strategies at the Tier 1 level for all students, as, again, preventative measures. We are also using a framework through the work of our department with some guidance from a task force that has been put together from multiple departments across our schools. And this is what we're working on, and really a systematic and systemic approach to have district-wide social emotional learning in our school system. Specifically, this year we are focusing on these goals to increase awareness, to provide explicit instruction, utilization of SEL strategies, and to help schools with school-wide initiatives. All of this work is in support of our mission to ensure all students are graduating from safe and caring schools. We are focusing on 3 phases of implementation: awareness, moving on to building capacity through talent development, and integrating everything that we're doing with our work in our work. Although our department is really in the infancy stages, we are really proud of the work that we've done, and we feel like we've really made great strides in bringing the 5 competencies and specific curriculum to our schools, and you can see on the training that has been done so far. We also provide numerous resources, and in your green folder, your packet, you'll see some examples of some of the newsletters that we have and ways that we are helping support SEL and school climate in the schools. We have many digital resources that we provide, and it's great to see the schools adopt our themes. I provided you with next month's theme newsletter, which is diversity and tolerance is what our message is. There's various ways that we are looking at impacting schools. You can see many of them are listed there. As well as we have a roadmap that we've been working on, and we really have been able to accomplish all of those things, and now we are at the point where we are looking to continue to increase our collaboration and start working on summer programs and online professional development modules so more people have access to the work that we're doing. In closing, I just wanted to share with you, this was released last week, and because it really is a national movement for spreading the word and the work, and the research and evidence that focusing on social emotional learning is bringing to schools. And so the Aspen Institute published this from a nation at risk to a nation at hope. And the recommendations there that you see are all in alignment with the work that we've been doing as a new department and as a district as a whole, which is just very affirming that we are bringing that message that nationwide everybody is saying we need to focus on the whole child and focus on building these skills within our students. So thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it.
Any questions?
Madam Chair. Tracy, who gets the newsletters? And I asked that question because it's very, very powerful topics, you know? And so who is actually being exposed to this newsletter, and what is the purpose of it?
Great question. So we have established social emotional learning contacts at every school. And so they get delivered to them into their inbox email every month. We actually send it out in the middle of the month, so they've already received next month's. Many schools have committees that they have formed, social emotional learning committees, and they bring them to committees, and then they're planning for next month's things that they can do school-wide to bring those messages and bring those resources to teachers. Everything is accessible to all employees. We have it on our SharePoint, as well as we have a website and a Facebook page as well. So everybody ultimately has access to it, but that's how we're delivering it specifically to schools.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and principals, school administrators are all aware of all these resources as well.
Madam Chair, if it's acceptable, would you send it to us so we have that? To read
We
that?
would love to do that.
And then, because some of us would like to share that with the or other groups we set on that are dealing with the same topic.
Absolutely.
Okay?
Thank you.
Any other questions before we shift gears to student assignment? All right. Dr. Prince is going to come up and explain to you a little bit about some of the challenges that we face with some of our growing populations and a possible solution and recommendation, and wanted to have a discussion with the board if there are any questions on that.
All right, good morning. Hope everyone had a long, restful weekend. I know about 49 states became Rams fans about 10 o'clock Sunday night to the making plans for the Super Bowl, or as I like to call it, the New England Invitational. We've got So anyway, I wanted to start out with some of the challenges that we're having in the green zone, and just some a little background of why we're having some student assignment challenges in the green zone. Whenever we created full magnet programs at Sam Gaines Academy of Emerging Technology, we started our full magnet in kindergarten and 6th grade. And those students that were enrolled in kindergarten that were not accepted into magnet programs, they got distributed, across the green zone. The same thing with 6th grade. They got distributed at our 2 schools that were options, which was Dan McCarty and Forest Grove. So also with CAST, you had an entire school that got reorganized, and the students that did not reapply and get into CAST were distributed across the green zone, which created some challenges with regards to space, particularly in kindergarten. So we want to make sure class size at the classroom level does not exceed class size requirements. And we have some challenges in specific grades, primarily in kindergarten and K through 3. We have limited space and capacity in the green zone. We also have other challenges, especially with some of our fragile schools. We kind of wanted to try to hold them a little bit harmless and not have the kind of turnover that you see at some of our schools in the green zones. And the budgetary constraints created challenges. We don't want to move portables, because when you move a portable, that's about $20,000 per portable, and that's an economic challenge. So what our recommendation is we want to increase available seats in kindergarten through 5 and create a couple of dual zone schools. We're not rezoning anything, it's just basically creating some dual zone schools for relief. We consulted with transportation, and the reason the schools were selected is because of our transportation routes. It wouldn't have an economic impact on the district. So the schools that we looked at to potentially enroll students in are Parkway and also Allocata. Now the reason and justification for that is Parkway sits, and I'm going to show you a map, of course you know where Parkway is, but Allocata is an opportunity scholarship school, so we already have bus routes that are going out to Allocata anyway. So we want to effectively utilize school facilities to meet our zone needs. We want to keep our class sizes at the classroom level, and we don't want to over-enroll students, especially at our fragile schools, and we want flexibility to provide options to students when grade levels are full. And as you can see, our map. So Parkway, once again, the schools were primarily chosen. Parkway, proximity to the green zone, but also through consultations with transportation and where our bus routes are already going, and also Allocata, because we have buses going out to the green zone for our Opportunity Scholarship students, so there's not really a change in any of our bus routes. So in summary, we want to add these 2 schools to help serve our green zone. Only Parkway and Allocata will be added. The schools will continue to serve their original zones when nothing's changing. Transportation will be provided to the parents, and we want to start these options literally in March for kindergarten open enrollment. And that's,
Oh, I'm totally confused.
how are you confused?
Yes, I am.
Talk to me.
Can you go back to the slide?
Which one?
That one there.
Yep.
So green 1, if you're in green 1, are you still able to go from Lakewood Park all the way to White City? Or are you trying to keep them in
Yes.
green 1? When are we ever gonna, we'll discuss it later.
Okay.
I understand.
All right. All right, any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Ingersoll.
Madam Chair, part of this is for availability in the particular schools that you've chosen. It has to do
Yes.
with
Capacity.
seats
Yes.
within schools. We
Capacity.
don't always have that in
Yeah.
every school. We
True.
just don't have the capacity.
Right.
So that's what you're trying to do, so we don't go over.
Yes, we don't want to go over capacity,
Size.
and also we want to provide some relief, especially as we grow our magnet programs.
And Dr. Prince, you mentioned that essentially there'd be no change to transportation. But would there be a change to it in the sense of the timing of the routes? Would have more stops, might have longer
I
rides?
don't believe so.
or-
Whenever we
Okay.
talk to Don and I.
No, there wasn't.
No.
Okay.
Look, Madam Chair, this is new for now in this team, but it's not new.
No.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Madam Chair. In dealing with Allocata Flats and Parkway being added to the green zone, does that give the parent more schools to choose from? Or how does that work when they're making
For kindergarten, it
for
will.
kindergarten? Okay.
For kindergarten, it will.
And so right now, they have what, 5, 3? What school, how many schools do they choose?
How many do they have, Michelle?
6.
6?
Yeah, Lakewood Park, Seymour, Longwood, Weatherby, White City,
St. Lucie Elementary.
St. Lucie Elementary. And did I say Longwood?
Yeah.
Okay, see more, you said?
And these
See,
schools are already full to capacity, basically for kindergarten?
For kindergarten, yeah, we're having struggles with capacity in kindergarten. And that's really the main reason, is to provide some relief.
I would say this is what parents are asking for, in my opinion, because I think people that move new to the county
Yeah.
have a real struggle, and I hear it all the time. I'm sure you do too, Michelle, that they try to get, and to keep their children together. That's the
Yeah.
other issue. Even if you have a seat in first grade, you may
Right.
not have a seat in kindergarten, and that is quite an emotional mess if
Right.
you have really young children.
And
Kindergarten.
that's one of our priorities too, is to keep our families together.
So.
All right, I'm just gonna say my piece. I think school choice is awesome, but when we have such a great land use, you know, when going from Lakewood Park to Weatherby, it costs a toll on our transportation. And one of these days, I think we need to redefine our lines and give a school choice 3 or 4 schools rather than all 6 schools. And tighten up our lines for efficiency and cost effectiveness to the taxpayer. And this has always been my deal, but I understand where we're at now. But eventually, the 3 or 4 year plan, we're gonna have to, you know, particularly when people start moving in different areas. And I have never said this to you guys, this has been in the past, but it costs us a lot.
Okay.
Yeah, and I understand what you're saying, Troy, too, because we have charter schools that are not providing transportation right now. And I think that is a real dilemma for parents, as we have the state saying school choice, school choice, school choice, and yet we have charters that don't provide transportation. So we're kind of getting squeezed in doing what we know is right for children. So
Well,
that's-
there's a difference of what we know is right for children and the parent. And the parents like, you know, hey, we can send our kid on the bus for 45 minutes and it's a daycare. And, you know, that's not public education, and that's not right for our community.
And Madam Chair, part of the conversation goes back to when we went to the choice program. You know, we were under a federal court order for an extremely long time. And part of that has to do with making sure that we try to keep everything fair, balanced as much as possible. And we have adjusted them over the years for different, changed the zones, and we have a process that we use. We had a whole bunch of public meetings all over the place and got input before we actually put the zones. But as you're right, as things grow.
Yeah, well, also, Ms. Hensley too, as you start looking at where our schools are located,
Yeah.
we only have one school north of town, and, you know, the rest of the schools are within a mile of each other on Okeechobee Road. So I understand that, but to add the other two in on the south end near Midway Road, sort of like, well, can't we divide it up a little bit? And rather than calling it one large zone, because when I saw that green zone, I was excited maybe we started to do that.
Yeah,
Because that's why I was like confused.
right.
But adding the two schools, I understand. But the reality of it is one of these days, we're going to have to look at the efficiency part of it
Okay,
and give kids opportunity of school choice, like Ms. Hensley said.
okay. Anything else? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Prince. We're going to go into an executive session. We're going to go over here to the Pelican room. No other presentations right now, and then after that, we'll do a professional development for the board.